Hi, and welcome back to Footnotes. I'm Tshego Mosiane, lead strategist here at Reconnected Group Africa, a research and intelligence-based business consultancy focused on rural development in Southern Africa. Footnotes is our informational series where we cover strategic issues that investors, executives, and entrepreneurs operating in Africa will eventually have to face. Each video focuses on a specific topic that's shaping how business is done on the continent. And we're here to help you understand why it matters, how to leverage it, and how to position yourself early. Today's topic is clinical development as it pertains to product development. Clinical development is a vital but severely underserved aspect of developing innovative products. Here at Reconnected Group Africa, some of what we do includes different market intelligence research on different parts of the world, including Asia, South America, and Eastern Europe. And one thing that we found is that in those places, clinical development is still a highly sought after and valued aspect of the product development journey. If you look at places like South Korea, the Korean beauty boom has produced viral beauty products around the world. But this would not be possible if not for the scientific research through different kinds of clinical development studies to find the active ingredients that truly make Korean beauty stand out. And in order for there to be a consistent stream of development in products and offerings for consumers, there needs to be a consistent stream of clinical development trials of varying kinds to produce scientific studies and reports that could eventually lead to more products being designed and developed. And when speaking to producers in Africa who have developed their own products, they say that they usually start off of research that is either freely available or from government institutions, meaning that they are on the back foot. This is reactive research, not proactive research. This limits the kind of products that are available in Africa, even though we have one of the most eclectic and wide varieties of natural resources in the world. When you look at so many other places in the global south, there's more quantified data on what local indigenous plants and minerals do in the shape of a product. And as part of Africa's overall stated goal by different presidents and across different economies, the continent is really looking to increase our manufacturing capacity. And if we want to do that in a strategic way in order to maximize profits, that should include creating and innovating unique products based off of our natural resources ourselves. A good recent example of this is how, because of the trend set by so many South Korean beauty researchers, there are now more people trying to replicate that trend in Africa. But unfortunately, most of those products are still manufactured overseas. The clinical development studies and therefore the research and information is the proprietary asset of labs and researchers overseas. We believe that there is a huge opportunity for clinical development trials and clinical development funding that leads to commercial products that would not only be popular in Africa, but around the world. So, to discuss this further, we brought in an old friend of ours. Dr. Anthony Otigbu is a Nigerian-born, German-educated, and South African-based clinical development specialist. And he is also a sitting member of the advisory board of Reconnected Ventures and Reconnected Group Africa.
Last year, I worked with a client that wanted to sell not medical, but just recreational marijuana. And at the time, it was while the regulations were still in transition. So I spent a lot of time talking to the people at like SAPRA and like just the other health product authorities. And something that like the conversations really highlighted for me was how few of these products are developed here. Um, but I just wanted to know, like, how did we get here, first of all? Like, what is the state of the local clinical development scene?
To be perfectly honest with you, Africa isn't there yet compared to the high resourced countries.
Mm.
And uh, it's largely due to the clinical infrastructure, clinical trial infrastructure. The high resource countries, I'm talking about the US, Europe, and Eastern Asia. These guys have all the resources to do, they have all the experience to do, and Africa largely has been trailing. And I'm going to say something very remarkable to you that I think, if I'm not mistaken, about 76,000 plus research clinical trials have been conducted globally so far. And guess what? Africa is maybe like 1% in that contribution, which it's very low. Is very low. And even when we talk about clinical trials in Africa, clinical development in general in Africa, there are three major countries that are main beneficiaries in Africa. We're talking about South Africa, which is the major beneficiary due to the healthcare, public health infrastructure African they have much more advanced than any other African country. You have Kenya, then Uganda. Those are the three main places where countries where trials are largely um, involved. So there's a lot to go into that. That Africa has to start looking inward on their own, sincerely, to start training people on clinical developments.
I guess, well, I mean, then how do we correct that, right? Is it more government investment? Is it more institutional investment? Is it like, do we fix the science itself, the regulation, the capital, the execution? Like, what do you, from like your perspective, think? Or is it like
All,
an all hands on deck?
all these factors, yeah, all these factors play very key importance in this matter. The science plays a lot, the execution plays a lot, the capital plays a lot, and of course, what's the last one that is there? Yeah, the human capital plays a lot. So when if you talk about investment, I have to bring your mind back to something that's private investment in clinical development is different from institutional investment.
Mm,
Quite different. Their interests are quite different.
mm,
For instance, the private investor is so keen on his ROI, the return on investment. That is what they are majorly after, the commercialization of their products and the distinction of their product from every other existing product. They are and associated things with them are quite different. While the public, for the public or institutional investment, they major on safety. They want safety and something that is beneficiary to the populace. So that being said, lesser funds are being injected for where their interests are. More investment come in from the private investor for bigger projects but they're not necessarily, and I use in quote, not necessarily interested in the public interest. They are just all about commercialization. But for the government, it's a different ball game. So they invest more on things like immunization programs. They invest more in all those AMR. They want to investigate antimicrobial resistance, new products that can fight antimicrobial resistance. They want to invest in something like the neglected tropical diseases or the rare diseases. That's where the investment come in because it concerns the populace the more.
Yeah, of
You
course.
get it.
Yeah.
So, but these other people, yeah. So this other aspect, the private sector will, you know, they can come and say, okay, want to invest in prophylactic. They just make drugs. They, but we don't really, and many of them don't even make it to the end. Clinical trials is a very delicate
Mm.
business we're talking here. Capital intensive, very regulated, very much regulated.
That's obviously, I think, why there's so few young people willing to take the time to grow in the industry because it has such a long, late benefit. Because I think like in South Africa, especially with the unemployment problem, there's like two layers of the unemployment. Is the people who feel like following certain careers has too long of a wait, like too long to study, too long to get to profit for certain businesses or things like that. And then there's people who have like past successes, maybe like yourself, people who worked in an industry for a long time, but they can't access capital to build their own thing, right, in the industry. So even when I talk to people, when I talk about clinical trials and all this
Mhm.
stuff,
Yeah.
maybe they're willing to start something about like, servicing other people's labs or like, cleaning companies or things like that. But doing the trials themselves, they feel like it's like virtually impossible.
No, this line of profession is highly specialized.
Hmm.
It's highly specialized, and going many of our, let me use the youths of these days. Many of them seemingly don't want anything, you know, that will stress them before you start making money. And mark you, when you talk about clinical trial, there's no much money as a staff, as a staff. Get it? When you are not the manufacturer. So there's a lot of speciality that goes into the whole procedure. And but what I can say is that government, the private, it has to be a private public sector collaborative thing, because Africa has long looked outside Africa for assistance, while we have all the resources, we have everything it takes to become the greatest continent in the world. While people outside can see what we have, we inside don't see what we have. So I think it is time. We've got the experts. Don't make no mistakes about it. We have the experts here in Africa, because many of them are in diaspora right now, because staying here, they feel nothing for me here. You get it. So government has to inject a lot of money into research in collaboration with private sector. That is the way to grow the economy. And with doing that, when you pump in a lot of money to research, interests will come up. People will start going towards that direction. That's the way you can obviously encourage people to come into that field.
If we had to ideate, what type of medicines or clinical trials would you like or interested in to come out of Africa maybe in the next 20 years?
In as much as I'm in this field, I still have my own bias for Africa. Um, I don't know about anybody, but for me, I do have a bias for Africa. And there's something I don't think healthcare should be generally universal. You get it? Like,
Yeah.
okay, studies show claim that Africa uh, has up to 19% of the global disease burden. That's on paper. But in reality, is that true? Is that really true? If we check, because when you look at these things, and what's on paper isn't in the real world, actually. A pharma company creates Panadol or paracetamol for headache. Meanwhile, in your village, you can actually mix one or two herbs and just drink it. The extract alone. For instance, I tell you, let me give you a picture. I think sometime in 2007, when I was still back in Nigeria, uh, I was working with a research institute there back then. We had a research collaboration with UNESCO, and we went to this World Heritage Site somewhere in northern Nigeria. And when we got there, it was so remote. It was so remote. But you see people living up to 120, 140 years old there, still strong, moving.
Mm.
What is their secret? What is their
I don't
secret? And these
know.
are people.
True.
These are people who are neglected.
Mm,
Nobody can. In fact, when you take population count, they're not even among the people you might count because you don't
mm,
want to get there. Do you
mm,
get it? But these
mm,
people live healthy. And in our project process, we encountered a lot of bees. There were lots of bees.
mm.
And we were so scared. We ran into our bus. We ran into our bus. We're taking cover. And this old lady walks up to us and said, "Why are we running?" And we were wondering, why are the bees not
What are you?
stinging, not stinging this lady?
Yeah.
And she just went into a nearby bush, brought out the leaf, squeezed the leaf, made a smear of the leaf,
Mm,
and asked one of us to come out and put it on our skin
mm.
and said to walk towards the bee. And we walked towards the bee, and guess what?
It was
The
like
bees were, it was repelling the bees.
natural repellent. Yeah. Ever
Yeah,
since yeah,
yeah,
ever
so.
since I moved back home to my gang, I'm seeing a lot of that too. That like a lot of
Mhm,
African
mhm,
elderly that live long don't trust a lot of these
mhm,
developed medicines, and they have developed, like you're saying, an understanding of
mhm,
secondary and tertiary functions. So I actually agree with you. I
mhm,
think a great way into that world, if you're a young person who wants to present ideas and contribute to the development. Maybe start like low, start understanding these like indigenous practices, and we might use
Yes,
them.
exactly.
We might
Exactly.
use them
Mhm,
without getting it on paper, without getting it quantified. And while we're not doing it, UNESCO and these other foreign bodies are. I'll give you an example. The resurrection plant, which is usually associated with spirituality and things like that, have has been used in the past few years for beauty treatments, and it's now quite prominent in this Afro chic beauty product world where it has extracts of the resurrection plant. And I thought that was very interesting.
mhm. Yeah. So an investment in that line will be of very great help for the African continent, sincerely. Yeah.
I
Because
agree.
if you go to some countries, maybe like India, you might get to a hospital now and they have a section for orthodox medicine, they have a section for trado medicine.
Yes,
So
that's
the
like
choice
across
the choice is yours.
Asia. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
also
yeah.
Africa needs to get out of this mentality of like our medicine is this
Westernizing
hidden
our
secret.
system.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
should be open, like walking into a store and seeing it all together so you can make your own comparative decisions. I think a lot of people will be
Mhm.
surprised at how many options we already have for ourselves.
Yeah,
And that would
exactly.
also shift the investment, because now the indigenous products are under like spiritual labels, and there's like Sangoma on the print, and I'm like, hey guys, it's salt. How
Yeah.
what's wrong with salt? Like what's going on?
Uh-huh.
So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, there has to be that. And I think if young people build that foundation now through educational programs, through research, like you're saying, in 10 years from now, it could be a defensible policy in parliament. It could be a
exactly.
defensible
Exactly.
investment.
Exactly.
It's like long
Yeah.
investments. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here are the strategic takeaways for investors, executives, and entrepreneurs in Africa looking to build a similar type of business. Number one, money walks and money talks. Unfortunately, the primary reason for this issue is a lack of funding. But that means that is a huge opportunity in the world of impact investment, VC, and other type of small-scale investing, given the long-term profitability of owning this type of research and information. Number two, the cultural divide. Well, at least that's what I'm going to call it. You see, Africans talk about religion and culture and identity quite fluidly, but there are still some touch points that are remnants of things like colonial mindset, apartheid laws, and other forms of segregation and class systems that made it seem that certain belief systems were better than others. But that is directly holding back some people from diving into deeper research on African botanicals, African herbs, African nature, flora, and fauna because of their association to African spirituality. And just like Dr. Anthony said, we must look to places like Asia, where traditional and indigenous spiritual practices and knowledge of flora and fauna have been able to inform their clinical research and scientists that then leads them to develop these very innovative products that people from around the world can use. And lastly, clinical development is a long game, which for many young people, especially in Africa with the lack of funding and government support, makes it look like it's an unattainable business. And for this, I challenge those of you who would like to get into this type of business to create different types of structures, look to different funders and investors. Really do push yourselves to take the long-term time to build the relationships that you need and essentially the trust and the acumen needed to attract the type of funding. This is not a short-term industry at all, but I do hope that in the next 15 to 20 years, we will see the results of more people, especially young people, taking on the painstaking work to categorize and organize African knowledge systems and indigenous knowledge into quantifiable data that can be used in modern times for modern innovation and development. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this footnote. If you are an investor, entrepreneur, or executive interested in building more resilient, proactive strategies for your businesses and ventures in Africa, definitely reach out to us at Reconnected Group Africa and find out how we can help you navigate through the maze that is Africa.